Hey guys, I'm here with another top 5 video. Today I wanted to talk about my top 5 favorite nonfiction books. However, I'm going to be sticking to nonfiction books that aren't memoirs because I plan to do another video specifically on memoirs, and I felt it wasn't quite as useful to repeat the same 3 books in each video. 2 of these books are cheating a little bit, as I haven't finished either of them yet, but I have read over halfway, and I feel like that's enough to be able to tell you that they're some of my favorites that I highly recommend. The first book I have to recommend is In the Garden of Beasts by Erik Larson. This is a book about the US ambassador to Germany in the 1930s and his family. It goes greatly in depth onto him and his daughter especially, as they both sort of deal with Hitler and the Nazis who have taken power at this time, even though the war hasn't started yet. And it's a very interesting look at the rise of Nazis, because it ends before the war starts. It ends about when William E. Dodd returns home to America and the American government pulls their ambassador from Germany. It gives you great insight into how Hitler rose to power and how he was recognized as the leader in Germany, and how a lot of things were allowed to happen, especially around the world. I would highly recommend this book to anyone who's interested in Nazi Germany, or even the rise of a government that pushes the world toward war. I only finished about half this book before I had to return it to the library, but it was amazing and I cannot wait to get back into it. The next book I have is a collection of essays called If You Knew Then What I Know Now by Brian Van Meter. These essays start from when he's a very young child, around age 6 in kindergarten, and go through his adulthood. They're mostly centering around his sexuality and him coming to terms with it, as he came from a very southern family where men were expected to be incredibly stereotypically masculine and into sports and hunting, and he is not necessarily into those things, and he struggles very early on with coming out as gay, and then later on with being a gay man, especially in the South. It is incredibly relatable and incredibly touching. I love his writing style in these, and especially the essay, Things I Want to Tell You on Our First Date But Don't, really stood out to me. Even if you aren't gay and you aren't necessarily looking for LGBT plus literature, I would highly recommend this book on its own. It is so beautiful and so touching, and I've read it at least 3 times. It's also really good to just pick up and read a single essay because you don't need to read the whole book at once, although if you do, that's an amazing experience as well. The next book I have is also one of the cheating ones, and that is Committing Journalism, The Prison Writings of Red Hog by Danny M. Martin and Peter Y. Sussman. This is a collection of journalism articles written largely about the prison system by Danny M. Martin, who went by the pseudonym of Red Hog. He was convicted of bank robbery and sentenced to a significant amount of jail time, and while he was in jail, he started sending articles to Peter Sussman. And this book is written by the 2 of them, and it consists mostly of his writings at the time. I believe he did most of this writing during the 90s, and at that time, there wasn't any, Orange is the New Black Netflix. There wasn't really any way for the American public to sort of understand what the prison system was like at that time. It's much more open today, but this was incredibly revolutionary at the time, and his writings did a lot of good for the prison system. I loved this book. I haven't finished it yet, but it's the kind of thing you can pick up and read on occasion, and just read certain articles, and they don't have to be read in order. They're very interesting. I'm not sure I necessarily learned a lot because it is more open today and a lot of the things about the prison system are common knowledge, but I do think it's a very worthwhile read, and I really enjoyed reading it. The next nonfiction book I have to recommend you is Ladies and Gentlemen of the Jury, which is The Greatest Closing Arguments in Modern Law by Michael S. Leaf, H. Mitchell Caldwell, and Ben Beisel. This is a trilogy, I guess you could say. They also have the greatest closing arguments in criminal law and the greatest closing arguments in civil law, all of which are incredibly interesting, and I would highly recommend, but this is my favorite. It is modern law, so a lot of the cases are a lot more relevant to our modern day life. It covers a lot of very famous cases, such as the Nuremberg trials, Leopold and Loeb, the DeLorean cocaine case, and the trial surrounding the My Lai massacre. It's very interesting. You don't have to read it in one sitting. It's very much split into separate chapters, and each chapter is about a different case. And if you're at all interested in law or any of these specific trials, I would highly recommend it. It's such a fascinating book. I really love this entire series, but in particular, this book. And the last book I have to recommend y'all today is The Lost: A Search for Six of 6 Million by Daniel Mendelsohn. I promise I'm not going to recommend this book in every single video that I make, but it's honestly one of my favorite books of all time and a book that I would highly recommend to anybody, even if you're not a huge fan of nonfiction. Daniel Mendelsohn spent years researching the Holocaust and Nazi Germany, as well as what happened to his family. And in this book you get not only the historical facts of that, but also his search. He spends a lot of time writing about that search, what he did and who he talked to, and you follow him along that journey. It's not just about the Holocaust, but it's a lot about him as well, and it's incredibly insightful and beautiful. I really cannot recommend this book enough. As always, let me know down below what nonfiction books were your favorite. I always love to find new books, especially nonfiction. Bye guys!